I would now like to invite back on stage Mr. Rehan Khan, MD, MSD India region. Could we please have you on stage?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're honored to have the Honorable Minister, Dr. Jitendra Singh, with us today as part of Together Against HPV and the Cervical Cancer Program. Let me just take just a minute to introduce Dr. Singh. Dr. Singh is a distinguished leader and visionary, and he brings a unique blend of expertise in science, in medicine, and in governance in our country. Dr. Singh has served as the Minister of State for Science and Technology and Earth Sciences for 2 terms, demonstrating dedication to scientific advancement and sustainable development. In addition, his leadership roles in the Prime Minister's Office, Atomic Energy and Space, showcase Dr. Singh's deep commitment to fostering innovation for the greater good. Beyond his political achievements, Dr. Singh is also an eminent and a very well-known physician specializing in diabetes and in endocrinology. His contributions to clinical research, education, and public health are widely recognized. Dr. Singh has authored more than 8 books, served as a professor and consultant, and chaired the National Scientific Committee for Diabetes, significantly advancing healthcare practices in India. He's also the first medical professional to receive the prestigious Jamna Devi Gyan Devi Award for Journalism, and he's also received the Lifetime Achievement Award in recognition of his exemplary dedication to the advancement of diabetes and of research. Dr. Singh's belief in leveraging science to address critical challenges aligns seamlessly with our mission to combat HPV-related diseases, including cervical cancer. We are privileged to have Dr. Singh join us today in this vital and important initiative, and we are honored to have you, Dr. Singh. Please welcome on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Could I please call up on stage Mr. Nikunj Gar, Senior Managing Editor, NDTV. Can we please have a big round of applause before we start this interesting conversation?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's very rarely that you discuss or the discourse is about public health in such a high-powered forum. And it's our exceptional good fortune to have Dr. Jitendra Singh with us, somebody who has, first of all, to begin with, worked in some of the most remote areas of this country, ensuring public health as a doctor, as a medical practitioner who has physically, personally combated the disease on the field. And then, as the Minister of Science and Technology, in the Prime Minister's office, contributed a great deal into what the Government of India has been trying to achieve in the forum of public health. Dr. Singh, welcome to NDTV.
Yeah, thank you, Nikunj. At the outset, very, very kind of you for this elaborate, generous introduction. And also thanks for making me a part of this event.
Dr. Singh, let me just ask you first, as far as the priorities of the government in the form of public health, particularly in terms of mass vaccination and preventive health care, the Prime Minister himself has spoken, Finance Minister has allocated budgets, etc. As the Minister of Science and Technology, you have also played a crucial role. How do you see this sort of panning out in the coming years and months as we take our journey towards a developed India?
No, Nikunj, if you ask me to spell it out briefly, I think the last 10 years after Prime Minister Modi took over, there have been new initiatives, there have been several path-breaking decisions. But I think what is most important is, and which is not often discussed, that there has been a huge, huge change of mindset, both on the part of the government approach as well as the citizen level, and that is now being recognized even across the world. For example, See, this event is a testimony to that. Today, we are here discussing this evening prevention of a disease, prevention, of course, of cervical cancer or whatever. Now, India is a country which was never taken seriously, never, for preventive health care.
And when you say so, you know it.
And leave alone preventive health care, even therapeutic health care. You can see in your vicinity, in your neighborhood, if somebody fell sick, they waited for 2-3 days to get the fever come down on its own. Only then they would think of. And in many sections of society, they had inbuilt mindset. कि ठीक हो गए तो माँ का आशीर्वाद, नहीं ठीक हो गए तो पिछले जन्म का कर्म. So as a result of which, the mindset was not prepared for preventive health care, which is started happening now for the first time. And the world is taken back. I'm telling you honestly because I have been, even as a professional otherwise, been in that circle of academics across the world. A country like India coming out with the first DNA vaccine for COVID. And at a time when the entire world was so apprehensive that look here, India with this population of 120 crore would not be able to take care of itself and will become a kind of a very difficult resource pool for the spread of COVID across the world. But contrary to that, when we saw the smaller European countries with just 10 million population not being able to take care of themselves, India not only set an example of managing the academic, but also coming out with the first ever COVID DNA vaccine and gifting it to the rest of the world. And that has not only raised India's esteem across the world, but has also made the rest of the world believe in India's potential. And they are looking up to us. And now, of course, there's a whole of focus. I think the credit to a huge extent goes to Prime Minister Modi because during the COVID, he launched Mission Suraksha and then was personally monitoring the progress of vaccine. And now we are also known for having come out with a series of indigenous vaccines. Of course, we are also working on malaria vaccine, on dengue vaccine, vaccine for the drug-resistant tuberculosis, so on and so forth. Also working on the genetic therapies for diabetes, for hemophilias, and I'm glad the Department of Biotechnology, which I am associated, is very actively playing a part. That also goes, the credit goes to Prime Minister Modi because before 2014, in the common parlance, if you uttered the word biotechnology, half the people would not be able to understand whether it is biology or technology, engineering or medicine. We had just 50 bio startups in 2014. Now it's gone up to 9,000. And we are among the first few countries in the world who have come out with an independent biotechnology policy, which is going to pave the way for bioeconomy, because our considered view across the world, and the most of the economists, is that the next industrial revolution is going to be bioeconomy driven, the recycling. And that's what is going to make India Atmanirbhar or self-reliant, because when you have fuel sources other than petroleum, you would no longer depend on those countries that you are depending now. So likewise, I think there's a huge change which has given us confidence and also changed our mindset.
And Dr. Singh, now that we are talking about national immunization program, which your government has actually completely, the paradigm has been reimagined under Prime Minister Modi's leadership in the last 1 decade. Do you think, threats like cervical cancer and the HPV, and on that also government last year announced an initiative, that they are also now becoming an integral part, or should be made a part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only that, I think that also is a reflection of the fact how much democratization of healthcare is happening in this country. There were times when women healthcare did not receive the kind of priority as the men healthcare.
Yes.
And even today, in the same subcontinent, India subcontinent, in fact, the other day we had a conference, I was telling one of the faculty members from Pakistan, I said, I don't believe your data, because we were, of course, into the data conference, because you have reported lesser prevalence in women, and that's because women don't report, and neither you reach out to them. So I think there also India has now taken a lead, and caring for women health with the conviction that women-led development is going to be one of the pillars or key to what we described as Viksit Bharat. Now, as far as cervical cancer is concerned, it has been there earlier also, but possibly the understanding was lesser. And thanks to events like the one being organized this evening, we have an annual mortality of around 3 lakh. To be very precise, I think the latest figure was 2,75,000. And but those at the risk are many, many more, manyfold, almost 45, 50 crore. So you can imagine in a population of 140 crore, where you have half the population or nearly women, you have so much of them at risk. And when we talk of Viksit Bharat, and we also believe, and as Prime Minister rightly keeps reminding us that each citizen has to contribute his might, his potential, the care of health becomes a national priority as well. Because we would not like their energies, their vital potentials to be squandered away through unhealthy ways or for non-productive ways. And therefore, and the credit again, we have the first indigenous quadrivalent vaccine now. And again, without sounding modest, the trials were done in the Department of Biotechnology. Now what happens is that those who market it, they get more of accolades. Those who do the research, it's just like a film being produced, nobody knows who's the script writer. Sometimes you don't even know who's written the lyrics, but you clap for the hero and heroine. Our data reflects that as much as 90 to 95% women who actually have cervical cancer, if you go back, if you try to elicit their history, they have had a history of having suffered from human papillomavirus infection at one time or the other in their life. So if we are able to target them and prevent the occurrence of this virus infection, we could also contribute to reducing their risk of developing cervical cancer. So I think that's the important, and it's affordable, it's accessible, and it has a wider spectrum, it's quadrivalent, and the doses, it's not difficult to administer, just about 2 doses up to the age of 15 and maybe then 3-dose regime. So I think by all means, it is affordable, accessible, and convenient. And once it's a part of the immunization program, it becomes far, far more easier for the common citizens also to avail of it. All that it requires is more of awareness and also reaching out to the people.
And as you said, that programs like these, companies like these have also played their role in awareness, which is a very important part of the preventive healthcare. And quite clearly, Dr. Saab, the role of the private companies in the immunization program or their contribution surely cannot be, surely cannot be seen through only the prism of them being outside the government matrix.
Yeah, no.
Surely they are an important player.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nikunj. Rather, I'll go one step forward. The time has come that if we have to move beyond from where we are today, this demarcation between private and public sector has to be done away with. And that's skepticism also. There were times, till about 20 years back, when the private sector looked at the public sector as a bunch of bribe takers, and the public sector looked at the private sector as a bunch of black marketeers, but it's no longer so. And even if that be so, we have no option but to move on together. The other day I was just narrating an example. मैंने कहा जब किसी बस में बैठते हैं तो साधु भी बैठता है, शैतान भी बैठता है, महात्मा भी बैठता है, चोर भी बैठता है. रास्ते में बस का टायर पंचर हो जाए, एटलीस्ट अब तो कम चलते हैं लोग बस में, आई एम टॉकिंग ऑफ माई टाइम्स, तो सब उतर के धक्का लगाते हैं बस को. शैतान भी लगाता है, साधु लगाता है, because the destination is common. So if we are actually very serious about our destination 2047, we have to learn to move on together and to make the best use of each other's potential. And since we are talking, we are discussing a scientific theme which needs to be discussed with evidence, we have evidently vindicated this conviction, this thought. For example, I think the easiest example is space. Till about 3 or 4 years back, till we got this new space reforms, again thanks to Prime Minister Modi, he allowed us to open space sector to the private players, because till then, space was working behind a veil of confidentiality with a very limited resources. And we took, we took strides in comparing it with NASA, कि सर हमने क्या किया वो इतना करके, without realizing that NASA doesn't depend on government sources. Very hardly much, I mean, it's a large proportion of its resource is outside the government. Once we opened it up, there's been a quantum leap in 3 or 4 years. We were just 1-digit startup in space sector. Today we have nearly 300. The first generation is world class. They have turned into lucrative entrepreneurs. The first startup group came to us, hired our launching pad to send up a rocket. And within 2 years, they set up their own factory just close to the Hyderabad airport. They are selling rockets to us. They're developing and selling us. So it's become a huge source of space economy as well. And that means, for example, I think the easiest way to appreciate is that ISRO was born in 1969. And that is the year remembered for Americans having landed the first human being on the surface of moon, Neil Armstrong. But today, we have landed on the southern pole of moon before anybody else, which means we had the potential, we had the capability, we had the commitment, we had the capacity to put in hard work, but we were holding ourselves back because of these self-made taboos. And once we gave away on that, I think we are now in a frontline nation of the world. And if we have to reach that 2047 target, we have to follow the global strategies. We need to follow the global benchmarks. We need to meet the global parameters. And therefore, I think this, and the larger the integration, rather the extended integration, even at the national and the international level also. For example, if I personally advocate when we collaborate with the other countries in terms of research, innovation, and startups, I tell them what I fancifully have coined PPP plus PPP, which means private-public participation from my side and public parties. You bring in your private sector also, the government there, and our government also can bring in their private sector. So all the four of us join together to create a larger ecosystem, and that's how it's going to work. And most of our success stories have been success because I always have been emphasizing even biotechnology, even in the other streams of science, that we need to have an early industry linkage. Our COVID vaccine could do well because we had already linked up with a private house before we started doing trials. Of course, the trials were done by us in our Faridabad Institute. So also, in case of HPV virus, we had already tied up with that institute in Pune. And similarly, as far as space is concerned, we also have a strong linkage with the industry. Now the FDI also coming in over there. So a strong industry linkage and an optimum synergy of research, academia, startups, and industry. That is the key to success. And that is because now, if we have to, and we search for ourselves a global role, we have no other option.
Yes, that's how the world moves.
Absolutely.
And I am glad, Dr. Saab, that you talked about taboos. One of the problems with this particular disease or this particular challenge of cervical cancer is that there's a lot of taboo associated with it. And that's why a lot of women, particularly in the rural areas, in the Mofussil towns, do not even go for screening. You think more awareness, more platforms like this that we are today looking at NDTV are required to spread that awareness so that more and more women can at least go for screening?
I think that requires a multifarious approach at different levels. As in the context of diabetes, which I deal with, I often say diabetes is too serious to be left to a diabetologist alone. Though it was very kind of you to have introduced me so. Because you have to have cultural inputs, you have to have social inputs, you have to have also the contribution from the NGOs, and so also is the case over here. Because this, as you said, and I think that holds good for a number of other issues that the nation is facing today, including drug addictions. We have seen parents not disclosing their child being addicted to drugs, and then ultimately themselves having the maximum suffering on themselves itself. So that is one part of it. Preparing the masses, the common citizen, to address the issue without having any inhibitions. A, B, reaching out by those who are entrusted with the responsibility of providing this facility. And C, as I said right in the beginning, more and more of preventive mindset, preventive healthcare mindset, which has started happening in India, but it was not happening till just about 10 years back.
Yes, the whole exercise of preventive healthcare is very, very important. And I think in that sense, for diseases
And
like...
also because 70% of India's population today is below the age of 40. And they are going to be the architects of 2047.
Absolutely.
So whatever the disease, and we are now the issue of preventive health care in young ages, as is the case in cervical cancer, is also now confronting us in other case of other diseases. For example, you are now getting type 2 diabetes mellitus at the age of 30, 25. Earlier on, if you received a phone call and somebody told you that he had been detected as diabetic, you would immediately form a picture of somebody in his middle age or around 50. It's no longer so. You are getting young heart attacks. And on the one hand, people have started living long, so they are getting diseases which they did not happen because they didn't live long enough to get the disease. On the other hand, the diseases of the later age are happening in the earlier age. Young heart attacks, young disability, young hypertensions, young these cervical cancers or other cancers. And all this is actually going to tell upon the nation's resource, which is going to pave the way for 2047. So I think it's become all the more responsible. So it becomes a collective responsibility.
Dr. Saab, one other thing is that in case of cancers particularly, when you hear the word, since you are a doctor, I am specifically asking you a question. When you hear the word cancer, capital C, you know, it is such a shock and it is so much of mental trauma that a person goes through that half of the spirit is probably lost in that itself. So as a doctor, would you say that, you know, we have come a very long way from the times when cancer necessarily meant a death warrant, and today preventive plus post-disease care is available where people can actually successfully come out of it?
No, I'm glad you asked that. And that's to a large extent very true. Actually, on the one hand, of course, the prevalence of cancer has increased for a number of reasons. But on the other hand, we have cure now. We have a long list of cancers which are actually designated as curable cancers. And we have large population of cancer survivors all across the world, including this country. They are holding regular workshops, regular counseling sessions. It's just that early detection, timely treatment, and seeking treatment where you need to seek or where you ought to seek. And I think to that extent, if cancer could be handled in time and by the proper hands, the other advantage is that India today is in no less capable of dealing with this compared to any other country in the West, unlike about 30 years back, which is true in case of all diseases. Like, for example, when the heart bypass surgery came newly into the world, you had all the VIPs rushing to Houston. The earlier generation journalists would recall. So Houston became very famous in India because any powerful person getting a heart attack would go for bypass surgery because you didn't have it.
For the cancer, the Sloan Kettering.
Yes, sir. So we had then first bypass in Railway Hospital, Chennai, Dr. Cherian, then we had Venu Gopal. So gradually, it's no longer so. We are having the same proton therapy, which is available elsewhere else, and much, much more cost-effective, as a result of which we have a whole lot of medical tourism happening to India. Our instruments are also cost-effective. And that is true in every sphere of science. Again, it has happened mostly in the last 10 years. I was giving that easiest example yesterday in one of these gatherings. I said, television happened in US in 1950s, and we got to see the first Chitrahar in 1970s in Delhi. It's no longer so now. We are among the first few in quantum technology, and quantum technology is seen to be believed so fascinating. Not only, I believe, not only medicals, others should also watch it, how precisely they give the radiation for the cancer. I mean, the tumor is aimed at, if it's a moving organ, like, for example, lung moving with each breath, or your gallbladder moving, that beam also keeps moving. It's like, hunting a flying bird, and a good hunter keeps his target moving, the nozzle of his gun, till he hits it. So it keeps moving till it precisely catches and hits it. So no collateral damage, no side effect of irradiation that used to happen till about a few years ago. So the technology has advanced to that extent, and incidentally, it's all available in India as well. So yes. I think that's all the more reason that we should be more awakened about it.
Yes, and that's a very interesting point, Dr. Saab, that we come to. In fact, the fact that technology, again, democratization of technology is so much that companies that would introduce a medicine earlier in your practicing era and all, much in advance to the Western world, it's no longer the case. Companies like MSD are, probably bringing the same kind of medicine on the same days, dates, and months.
Absolutely. Not only that, In fact, we are now in some ways also ahead of others. Just I was informally telling you, just a few days back, we reported the first ever indigenous antibiotic from India.
Yes, that you were mentioning.
So for the last 80 years, ever since Alexander Fleming came out with the first penicillin somewhere around 1948, which was first tried as an antibiotic powder on the wounds of the Second World War soldiers, wounded soldiers, and then it was hailed all over the world as queen of drugs. And ever since then, every successive generation of antibiotics, whether it's chloromycin, streptomycin, ampicillin, tetracycline, whatever, the trials were done in other countries, the drugs were developed. Now here we have come out with a drug called nephromycin, which is an antibiotic. Again, the trials done by the Department of Biotechnology, the support done by the Department of Biotechnology. The trials were done in Christian Medical College. Not Christian Medical College, sorry. The marketing is done by one of the pharma houses.
Big Pharma.
It's Vocard. So, and that has been reported in, I think, the last issue of New England Journal of Medicine. New England Journal of Medicine is one of the oldest medical journals because till about, I think, first half of the 20th century, the entire medicine, entire science was being controlled by United Kingdom, which was a larger Commonwealth kingdom. Americans took over only somewhere in the middle of 20th century. So the earliest medical journals which emanated from England was A, the British Medical Journal, B, the New England Journal of Medicine. So the New England Journal of Medicine reporting it means that now this is it. I mean, you don't have to have any other of doubts. And I'm glad, I am proud, in fact, I think maybe for the first time, an antibiotic developed by us, totally indigenous, is being reported by an England journal. So that is also now the acceptability of India's capacities. So I think now, not only that we are at par, in many ways, we are also moving beyond them.
Right.
And that's also because we have a huge, huge resource pool of patients, which they may not have. For example, they may not see so many cases of cervical cancer as we see. They may not see so many cases of tuberculosis as we see. They may not see so many cases of leprosy as we see, though this is coming to an end. We had a group of German researchers last year. They wanted to do a research in one of the medical areas. They asked me which disease you think we should take up. I said, you name the disease and I'll offer you. So India has a very, very wide
Large
spectrum.
population.
If you go to Northeast, and even in cancers, if you go to Northeast, you have head and neck cancers. If you go some of the slum areas, deep south, you have more of these papillovirus infections. If you go to high altitudes, you have polycythemias. So it's such a huge diversity which gives you a wide spectrum of disease.
And Doctor, the conversation cannot be complete without asking you this question before I ask you my last question, is that, you have been a practicing doctor yourself for many, many years. What do you think is the role that the medical community can play in terms of raising the awareness about the vaccines related to diseases like cervical cancer? Because as I said, there is taboo and there is lack of awareness. What is the role that your own community, your own fraternity can play in raising the awareness levels about such a disease?
No, I'm glad most of the organizations or medicos have now taken upon themselves such kind of activities. For example, among the physicians, we have the Association of Physicians of India, which is one of the largest physicians organization in the world, which is founded by Dr. B.C. Roy himself. Then we have the Indian Medical Association, which was again started during the British times. That's why the headquarters still continue to be in Kolkata. And then as far as diabetes is concerned, again, we have the largest organization in the world called Research Society of Study of Diabetes in India, of which I happen to be the life pattern now because I've exhausted all the offices. They kicked me up. So what I'm trying to say is that they have now consciously diverted themselves to the public activities. It's no longer confining only to the academic lectures. We have now categorized public lectures, public seminars separately. And now also there's a closer collaboration with the government sector by the private sector. They're no longer working in isolation or working in silos. And the NGOs are also coming forward, not only in medical science, but also in other areas. Like for plastics, they are coming forward. The circular economy, they are coming forward. Many of the celebrities contributing their resources, both in coin and kind. So I think there's a lot much of awareness happening across the sections of society, and that is going to create an ecosystem which is already started. And thanks to the social media. Sometimes they overdo it.
And thanks to the legacy media also.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. But legacy media also now being seen on social media.
Yeah, I mean,
so
that's another...
that's another aspect. But nevertheless, that has also created a lot of awareness. Now, when we talk of papillovirus, when we talk of these strains, 6, 11, what happens? An inquisitive kid will ask, what then if I get? You don't hesitate telling him you might get warts around your anal area, like that, you know. There's more of communicative temperament happening at the social level as well. That's again because there's democratization in the families as well. So I think more of communication at the family level, at the social level, and at different levels is actually contributing to that. So, and of course, without that, you can't be actually expecting to achieve the optimal results also.
And Dr. Saab, since you represent the government of India here, I must ask you for our audiences, and we also have some ASHA workers here who have very, patiently sat through this entire program, and as always, they have contributed.
Yeah, and see, this, when we work in a tandem as an ecosystem, some of what which I can't deliver, my ASHA बहन can deliver. कुछ ऐसी बच्ची है जिससे मैं कुछ बात नहीं कहना चाहता, ये मुझे कहने में संकोच हो रहा है, उसे सुनने में संकोच हो रहा है, तो मैं कहता हूँ. And we have done this experiment. ये हमने सफल प्रयोग किए हैं. तो ये जो एक इकोसिस्टम बना है, integrating, all components of society for a single goal or a common goal is what is going to make the difference.
And as I was saying, my last question, Dr. Saab, to you about the government's own national immunization program, including, of course, the challenges of newer, I would say, sort of coming to the fore diseases like cervical cancer. How do you see the government's own national immunization program panning out from here? What impetus do you think, are further required from other collaborative wings? And what is the government's key focus in ensuring that there is a universal national immunization that is achieved shortly enough?
Yeah, I think we should first appreciate the thought behind it. And I think it's none less than Prime Minister Narendra Modi who's personally taking interest in that. And his personal indulgence has made a lot much of a difference. Now, when we talk of TB Mukt Bharat, it comes from him. It's no longer left to the professionals. The Prime Minister himself talks of it. So that's when we talk of yoga or Swachhata, he speaks about it in his Independence Day address from the ramparts of Red Fort. He says, create or construct toilets for schoolgirls. And he's saying this in his Independence Day address, which was unheard of. You didn't have a Prime Minister, any of the Prime Ministers talking all this. We thought Prime Minister on the Independence Day is expected to talk of lofty ideals. But he was talking of these fundamentals. So that has given a huge, huge impetus. Secondly, combining our traditional knowledge with the cutting-edge technologies. That's also making a difference. Like, for example, only this morning I was telling somebody, I said, have you ever realized in what a large spectrum this government has started functioning? And very thoughtfully, with the initiation of Prime Minister Modi. See, after taking over as Prime Minister, within a few weeks, he goes to the UNO, puts in a proposal to have a yoga day. And simultaneously, from the Red Fort, he is talking of Startup India, Stand-up India. So traditional knowledge and in COVID you saw, both the things came handed. So covering the huge spectrum of our resources which were not being fully explored, because traditional knowledge is our exclusive resource.
Yes.
So that was not actually being, plus also being at par with the other countries, the cutting edge technology. So the fusion of two is going to give us an advantage over others. And that is what has started happening now in this government. And the immunization program is also part of that. As I said, the mindset change has also started happening now. You had people voluntarily going out for care. And I think thanks to COVID, not that I mean that COVID should happen again and again, but that has been also responsible of creating this awareness of preventive healthcare, because when you are faced with the threat of death, and that has also awakened the world to the virtues of oriental health systems, of Ayurveda, of homeopathy, of naturopathy, and integrating them with the allopathy, because even on the part of those who looked at it with a certain amount of contempt, because in the middle of night during the pandemic, you find some of the counterparts from US calling up and asking us to suggest some boosters from homeopathy. Some of those who had never had a kind word for homeopathy. So that, I think, has also created awareness and made the world realize as a whole, and more so India also, the importance of preventive health care in the true sense, and making us realize the essence of the proverb that prevention is better than cure.
Thank you, Dr. Jitendra Singh. Those golden words, prevention is better than cure. I am very grateful that during the middle of a very busy time, during the middle of a parliament session and regular meetings of the cabinet, you could find time to connect with the NDTV viewers, with our audience.
Thank you, Nico. This is part of our collective responsibility, duty towards the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.